Altria Group stock is in the nicotine business, specifically the nicotine business domestic in the US, and this is not by any means a growth industry, as evidenced by their stagnated revenue. However, there are multiple reasons why I still personally love this stock and hold it in my value portfolio. You've all heard me say that growth is an element of value. However, even something that's not growing still has some value. It's worth something for this stream of cash flow, even if the underlying business is not in its growth stages. The share price has been beaten up pretty severely over the last 12 months, with a little bit of an uptick today on the announcement of basically $1 billion over the next year in share buybacks. So this is all about rewarding shareholders. You could have all the growth you want in the long term, but what's the point in owning something forever if you never get rewarded as a shareholder? Altria's main claim to fame is, of course, their massive dividend, $3.92 per share annually, with a current yield at the current price of over 9%, with a payout ratio near 80%. Their dividend growth streak is impressive. They are a dividend king, and their most recent hike was 4.35%. Now, there are companies growing their dividend faster, but with a starting yield close to the double digits, I wouldn't be complaining about a mid-single-digit % dividend raise. That's more than some people get at their jobs. And since 2014, the dividend payout per share has actually more than doubled. So if you bought shares a decade ago, you would have seen your income more than double over the last 10 years. I think that's pretty impressive. The other way that they reward shareholders, which I think doesn't generally get as much attention as their dividend, but I think is the main reason the stock is up today, is they consistently buy back shares, and they've been doing so quite a lot lately when the stock has been cheap. When stocks are cheap, the company can really add value to shareholders by buying back those cheap shares, because what it does, essentially, is first, saves them money. Every share they buy back, there is one share whose dividend they no longer have to pay out, which conserves that cash for the remainder of your shareholders. And what it does, if you think about every publicly traded company as a giant pie and each share is a slice, well, if you have the same size pie and you have fewer slices, each slice is bigger. So they increase your piece of the pie just by sitting there and buying back shares. You get a bigger piece just for sitting there doing nothing. And it's more effective when those shares are cheap. When the shares are on sale, the effect of the buybacks is magnified and much more beneficial to shareholders than when shares are overpriced or trading at a premium. The stock is sort of boring and not particularly loved by analysts. Analysts rate Altria overall as a hold on the high side, mid-50s, low side, mid-30s, with the average being in the mid-40s, so a little bit better than where it is today. My personal view on a sweet spot for entry into the position is I like it basically below 50. Or at least below 50 was my position in the past on Altria Group stock. I do occasionally like to reevaluate it and just see what I think a realistic discounted cash flow would be for the business. Altria is one of those companies that, due to the very consistent cash flow, I'm pretty comfortable just going with something like a 10% discount rate. Now, in this case, when I factor in also the negative tangible book value, if I didn't do that, I would be getting a price of about $60, but instead I'm getting a price of about $48. And that's a choose your own adventure. You can decide how much you want to factor in the balance sheet. Assuming 4% growth, I think assuming growth will probably be maybe slightly ahead of long-term inflation is probably a pretty reasonable bet for Altria. It could be a little bit less some years and a little bit more some years. And if they do well with their plans for their Enjoy vaping product, well, it could be that we have a few better years here in the near future. This is one of those instances where if I'm wrong, the most likely scenario is that instead of 10, 11, 12% on the stock, maybe I make 8 or 9% instead. And honestly, I think if your losing scenario is making like 8%, that's not so bad. Altria Group stock is rated by Morningstar as having a wide economic moat, which I agree with. It's not really easy for competitors to enter the space that they're in. They have a fair value assigned of $52 per share, which is a little bit higher than where I like to enter this stock, but it does show that there is some potential upside there. At the end of the day, if you have a business with a wide moat, trading at a low multiple that prioritizes rewarding shareholders, I think you do have the recipe for decent returns in the long run. There's uncertainty about the future of their business as smoking is on the decline, but it does seem like vaping is on the rise, and they are making heavy investments into that area as well as some other products to offset as much as they can the decline in smoking. And frankly, I don't think smoking is going fully away anytime in the near future. Remember, that's just my take. Just because I'm personally holding the stock with diamond hands for now, and I think it's right for me, doesn't necessarily make it right for you or anyone else, but let me know what you think. If you did make it to the end, I'd like to thank you for holding on to the video with diamond hands and subscribing to the channel, liking it for the algorithm, commenting below with your thoughts, hopping on Discord and sharing your thoughts there, as well as maybe becoming a channel member and, watching me every Saturday night, 8 p.m. Cashflow Kings Live, link in the description.